Hello, welcome to the Saroy channel. I've got a lovely story for you tonight, and you're really going to enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel because there's so many more stories coming up. So let's get started. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, my Bigfoot encounter happened a long time ago, and the trauma was so devastating and debilitating for me, I have no memory of the experience at all, until my memory came flooding back in a way that you would never imagine could be possible. All my life I suffered from the most horrendous, debilitating panic attacks that were so bad that I was sometimes even too terrified to leave the house. I would go shopping at Walmart for groceries, and suddenly my chest would tighten, my heart would pound, and I would feel so overwhelmed with fear that I would make a hasty retreat back to the car. I have been known to leave groceries in the parking lot or in the middle of a transaction. I once took my dog for a walk and had a panic attack on the pavement, and a lady stopped her car and my dog and I got into the back seat. She then drove me back home because she saw that I was in a terrible state of panic. Then there were times people would think I was frightfully rude when I never turned up for a social event or left a party too soon. But how could I tell anyone what my problem was? I never even told the members of my own family. But then again, I was never really close to them anyway. The only person that knew about my daily struggles with this crippling fear was my husband, but he did not even know the half of the inner turmoil I was really experiencing. I knew I had to do something about my problem because it was ruining my life, and so I booked a medical consultation with a doctor who did all kinds of blood tests as well as tests for nutritional deficiencies, and everything came back normal. He then advised me to go on antidepressants, which surprised me because I was not depressed, but he explained that anxiety and depression are all connected to the serotonin levels in the brain, and so the same pill worked for both problems. Within a week of taking those pills, my life was transformed, and I was 1,000 times better, and it really seemed that my anxiety attacks were a thing of the past, until the day my dog was run over by a car. Within a short time of that, I was back to square one, dealing with greater anxiety than I had before. My doctor then decided that I should consider regression therapy. It was something he thought might take me back to the root cause of my anxiety. He said that maybe I purposely blanked out this anxiety. He explained that the therapist might be able to find out what the cause of my anxiety was. He had seen amazing results with other patients. To be honest with you, I really thought the idea of such a therapy was wacko. But when you're desperate enough, you'll try anything. The regression therapist was a kindly middle-aged woman with a lovely warm smile, and she regressed me back to my early childhood. And then memories I had never even knew I had came flooding back. I was sitting on a swing in the garden, and I was only 4 years old at the time. I could see myself being pushed by my next-door neighbor, a girl of about 15, who was called Lottie. She would watch over me when my parents were out. I remember Lottie ran into the house to answer the phone, because in those days we did not have mobile phones. I started waddling around the garden in my nappy, and the next thing I remember was this huge creature snatched me in his large arms, and I screamed in terror. Lottie came bolting out of the house with my dad's rifle and fired some rounds at the creature, and it dropped me on the grass and fled. The therapist asked me to describe the creature to her, and it appeared that I had seen it a few times watching me on many occasions. I described it as very big and hairy, like a big monster ape creature that was very tall. The therapist believed I was describing a Bigfoot, and she asked me where I'd grown up, and I told her that I'd lived here in West Virginia all my life, and had lived in a rural area with ubiquitous trees and rambling vegetation, beautiful lakes, and plenty of wild animals. After my session with the therapist, my panic attacks left me and never returned, so I believed that Bigfoot was the root cause of these attacks. I decided I wanted to get in touch with Lottie, because in my regression she was the one who fired rounds at the creature, so I contacted her, and she agreed to meet me. When I told Lottie about my regression therapy, she suddenly burst into floods of tears. It turned out that the memory of the event had weighed heavily on her conscience for many years because she had never told a single soul what had happened to me that day. I just knew they wouldn't believe me. she said. What happened from your perspective? I asked her. Well, I do remember the phone ringing, and I went to answer it, leaving you in the garden. You were very little at the time. Then I heard your screams, and they were terrifying, so I grabbed the rifle immediately because I knew something was wrong. Then I saw this dirty brown creature that was enormous, running off with you in his arms. He was 8 foot tall, and he was very thick in proportions, especially shoulders and chest area. Initially he looked like a bear, but he was bipedal, and his arms were way too long to be a bear. I also saw that he had hands, and bears don't have hands. I never got a look at the face, but when I fired those rounds after him, he literally jumped 6 feet in the air, and then he dropped you and fled into the undergrowth. I remember running over to you screaming. I was absolutely certain you were dead because you were motionless for a while. But, believe it or not, you did not have a bruise on your body. It was extraordinary. You got up and tottered away, and you started to build sandcastles. I was so glad that you were okay. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock because I really thought you were dead, and there was no way I was going to tell your parents or anyone about what I'd seen that day because I knew that they would not believe me. As you can imagine, I was glad to have got in touch with Lottie for her healing as well as mine, because both of us have suffered anxiety over the event. It was the best thing I ever did getting help, and I recommend anyone who has a trauma of any kind to see a therapist because it could change your life as it has mine. Love to you and all your listeners. Until next time, goodbye.